Good evening, everyone. I want to call this meeting to order at 5:32. Mr. Huerta, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can we get a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. President Joey Acuña Jr.
Here.
Vice President Jocelyn Vargas.
Here.
Clerk Silvia Paz.
Here.
Trinidad Arredondo.
Present.
Valerie Garcia. Jesus Gonzalez.
Here.
Student Trustee Eric Huerta.
Here.
Thank you.
Trying to see. We're moving on. I tried to. Mr. Tortas isn't in the audience, is he?
Señor Tortas no está en la audiencia.
I did text him. I have received no answer. We will move that item if it's okay with everybody after we come back from open
No
session.
lo he recibido de
He's not here, so either we pull it or we just move it. So I'm going to move it over to after we come back, and hopefully he's here by then. Okay, moving on. Item 3.1, closed session public comment. Public comments, closed session. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the governing board regarding any closed session items within the board's subject matter jurisdiction. Please complete a request to address the governing board form and hand it to the recording secretary. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes per person with the maximum of 20 minutes to each subject matter. I have three ones. Ashley Sinkansky.
Hello. Okay. Hi. Good evening. My name is Ashley Sinkoski, and I am the chairman for CVTA's bargaining team. And here with me tonight, I also have the rest of CVTA's bargaining team as well. And we're here tonight because we want to provide you with some information related to labor negotiations and how the district seemed to arrive at this current financial situation. Dr. Esparza, as Assistant Superintendent of Ed Services, joined the district's bargaining team for the 23-24 round of negotiations, and that means that she was present and participated in the discussion I'm about to talk to you about that took place on October 25th, 2023. That day is significant because that is the day the district told our team that the school board wanted to continue the intervention program, paying them out of the general fund when the ESSER money runs out. Our team shared concerns that it would not be sustainable for the district to continue to run a program that was intended to be temporary. Two direct quotes from our team to the district's team that day include, quote, "Is the district considering keeping the intervention teachers, and the question is why? That will hurt the district financially." And later the same day, another quote, "Funding intervention with general funds sets the district up for financial trouble. We tried to warn Dr. Esparza, but instead it was argued that the school board wanted to continue the program, and when the program's effectiveness was brought up, Dr. Esparza was the one to discuss the data being collected to support the board's decisions." Now, we have several sets of notes from that day, legal documents pertaining to negotiations, and they all reflect Dr. Esparza's role in all of this. Less than a month after the October 25th meeting, the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Dr. Ellis, was placed on leave, and Dr. Esparza took over as the chair of the district's team. And tonight, Dr. Ellis is being blamed for making temporary positions permanent, yet it would have been illegal for her to not do so when the intervention program was continued. Tonight, the Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, who was just recently placed on leave, is also being blamed for not laying off as many teachers as she should have. This is because Dr. Esparza herself chose to create new coaching programs working with CVTA on those job descriptions, and this is not because the Assistant Sup of Business Services made a mistake. Dr. Esparza was also at the bargaining meeting when we discussed the district's reserves were at 17.5%. And she did not dispute that amount, although tonight she places the blame for that on others. Dr. Esparza was the one who made the call to board members to approve the salary increase that we negotiated, so do not blame CVTA for that. The evidence presented clearly demonstrates that Dr. Esparza and the school board made those decisions that have led to the district's financial challenges, and despite your attempts to shift blame onto others, the records prove that your direct involvement and approval of decisions and actions that have contributed to the current financial situation. Accepting responsibility for your mistakes is a crucial part of effective leadership. Thank you.
Simon Moore?
Good evening, everyone. I'm speaking on the potential legal litigation that is on the agenda. There are far too many legal liabilities in CVUSD that have been the self-inflicted acts of financial mismanagement. A lot of the blame has been shifted to the teachers and the greed and all that other stuff. But no matter where it is, in the course of the duties that we must do as teachers, in the course of my duties with the CVHS Health Academy and HOSA, we are privileged to interact with agencies of all sorts in the Valley and even the state and beyond. Over the past month, it happened 3 times where I introduced myself as a teacher. They smile and ask, wherewith? And with courage, I tell them CVUSD. Their face changes. I'll hear comments like, it must be tough for you over there. You're in our prayers. Don't worry. It'll all come out and change will come. I can only imagine that our students experience similar reactions, only not so civilized. We go on to be the best role models that we could possibly be. We know that it's true that it will come out, and those who sat quietly weren't quiet at all. They were participants. Over the past year, there's been much about dishonesty, much about control, much about silencing those who speak out, about revelation, about courage, and those things that threaten it. The same tactics that happened in the most recent election seems to have been employed in our own school district. No one really understands why or for what reason the drive to hold on to power prevails, despite obvious dissatisfaction and impropriety. The district is better than what we've been receiving. There are people who care. They have stepped up and will continue to now be active participants in delivering us to the place where we won't be ashamed to divulge our affiliation. Until then, we'll continue to be that North Star for our students in this community. We will continue to be the patches of land where the floods of personal interests have flooded this area. Please switch legal affiliation and avoid any further conflict of interest so we can start moving forward to where this district deserves to be. Thank you.
Sarah Chavez.
So she's not speaking anymore? No, she's not speaking anymore. She will not be speaking anymore.
Okay, then that's all I have. Can I have a motion to go into closed session, please? Have a motion, do I hear a second? Have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Oh, actually, you want to do that first? Oh, no, you got to talk to him first, right? Okay. We're going to go into closed session, and when we come back, we're going to swear in Mr. Torres. He has some paperwork that he has to do first, and so we'll do that when we come back from closed session. All right. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. We will be back at, what, 7:30? 7:30? 7:30. And then we'll do the swearing in. Okay, we're going to call this meeting back into order. There was a motion and a second to return into open session. It passed unanimously. Next item on the agenda, item 4.1, return, we motion that. Item 4.2, announce actions taken in closed session.
Yes. The board took the following action in closed session. Approved expulsion case number 23/24-005 for clear reinstatement. The motion was made by trustee Jesus Gonzalez, second by trustee Trinidad Arredondo, and the motion carried 6-0. The board also took action in closed session to approve expulsion case number 24/25-008 for stipulated expulsion. The motion was made by trustee Trinidad Arredondo, second by trustee Valerie Garcia, and the motion carried 6-0. The board took action during closed session to appoint employee number 2025/06/567 as interim assistant superintendent of educational services at Coachella Valley Unified School District effective Monday, December 16th, 2024, on this 13th day of December 2024. The motion was made by trustee Silvia Paz, second by trustee Jesus Gonzalez, and the motion carried 6-0.
Thank you. Next up, may I have an approval of the agenda as submitted with the simple change of moving the swearing-in ceremony to the other section? So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. And now we're going to have the swearing-in ceremony. Dr. Esparza, Mr. Torres, if you will.
Good evening, board members, student trustee, community members, and everybody who is in the audience with us. Tonight, we will swear in Mr. Torres with the oath of office to become a board member here in Coachella Valley Unified School District. Mr. Torres, can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to affirm that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and to the Constitution of the State of California, and take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that it will and faithfully you would discharge the duties upon which you are to enter tonight?
Yes, I affirm.
Thank you. Can you please sign here? Two people. We'll have you sign some more. Thank you.
Okay.
Would you like to say something?
Thank you, Superintendent, for that. It is an honor to be representing the area that I am living in at this time, and I think that's the main reason that I ran for the board, is to represent the area that I'm living in, the community, which is an integral part of the entire community as represented here for the 16,000+ students that are in the school district now. Again, I'm here just to advocate for the community I live in, but there's also an underlying part that I also represent. So I hope that with the future, we can advocate and work together for all of the students of all communities for the Coachella Valley School District. All right, thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on. There's another change in here that for some reason it went wrong. We're going to do the public comments now, then we'll do the board member comments and the trustee, student trustee comments, and then we're going to go into the organizational updates. That way it stays within the public comment side. Moving forward, board notifications and requests to address the board. Public comments, open session, introductory comments and requests to address the board on items on the adopted agenda and items not on the adopted agenda will be considered from the audience at this time. Please complete a request to address the governing board form and hand it in to the recording secretary. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes per person with a maximum of 20 minutes to each subject matter. Additionally, the person making the request should state his or her name and the name of the organization or group represented. Please be advised that the board is not always at liberty to answer questions right away. State law prohibits the board from taking any action on items not listed on the agenda. First up, Dr. Price, Riverside County Office of Education.
Thank you very much, President Acuna, members of the board, Superintendent Esparza. Pleasure to be here tonight, and thank you for letting us use public comment for this quick item. My name is Scott Price, County of Riverside, Board of Education. I'm the Chief Business Officer there, and I'm here for 2 short items. The first is, as we talked about in our last board meeting, I wanted to introduce the fiscal advisor who has been assigned. This is Mr. Ajay Mahindra, who will be joining our team and assigned to the district here as the fiscal advisor. Ajay has a wonderful experience as both a CBO and in other fiscal capacities also. Wonderful man. You'll enjoy very much working with him. And the second reason that we're here, I have my whole fiscal service district fiscal services team here. We're here for your first interim tonight, and to listen to that, I want to thank the board for working so hard with Dr. Esparza and putting together a plan and a wonderful first interim for tonight. So that's my public comment. Glad to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Price. Next up, Gary Soto, status of professional development and coaching.
Good evening, School Board President, Mr. Acuna, school board members, Dr. Esparza, Executive Cabinet, and student designee. I am Gary Soto. I'm the founder of Gary D. Soto Consulting Company. I want to take this opportunity to provide you with an update on the professional development, the coaching, the leadership support I've been offering the past few months. Some of you read or heard about my work over the last 50 years. I shared 10 letters from local superintendents and instructional leaders highlighting the impact of my work and in their districts. These included letters from Palm Springs, Beaumont, Hemet, superintendents, along with state leaders. A prime example of my work can be seen in Garden Grove Unified School District, a district of 40,000 students. Once referred to as Garbage Grove, this district underwent a profound transformation under the guidance of my former company, Action Learning Systems. Garden Grove went from many schools near program improvement to earning the very prestigious National Broad Foundation Award for closing the achievement gap, silencing the derogatory nickname forever. I see Coachella Unified School District earning a distinguished national award highlighting student achievement. I am also the co-author of Crimes Against Learning, Solving the Serial Failure of Public School Reform, a guide that has helped hundreds of districts overcome systemic hurdles to put students' needs first. The major message of this book is to stay on course. Transformative reform takes years. A copy of this book has been given to all of you. Currently, my work in Coachella Valley Unified School District has focused on creating an instructional framework that serves as a cornerstone for a multi-year effort to accelerate learning. Your district faces significant challenges, with 71% of your students not proficient in reading and 83% not proficient in math. These numbers underscore an urgent need for strategies that can deliver not only just 1 year growth, but multiple years of growth in 1 year. What sets CVUSD apart from its commitment is this transformational development. And under the leadership of Dr. Esparza, I'm proud to report that teachers, instructional coaches, site administrators, and district educational support staff are making remarkable progress.
Your time is up.
I am thrilled to be a part of this journey. Thank you.
Okay, next up, Monica Murillo, items 14.7, 16.1, and 16.2. You have 9 minutes.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Dr. Esparza, student trustee.
Can you pull the mic a little bit closer?
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
I normally don't come and speak out or complain, but I'm tired of getting bashed and not standing up for ourselves and our staff. So I'm coming forward in good faith ahead of the board approval of our expanded learning contracts, because anything it comes to the board with expanded learning or ELOP, it always gets picked apart, claiming non-transparency, needing more info by the same people. Before the end of last year, we submitted requests to increase our independent contracts prior to the fiscal deadlines to ensure that our over 100 contracted staff had paperwork for their contracts in before the cutoff to ensure that their contracts were in place by the start of summer. But our request was pulled for more information. The following board meeting was already after the district cutoffs, and during that time, the school stream form was changed, which caused us to have to start from scratch, resubmitting all of those contracts. This further delayed our contracts, and our contracted staff did not get paid for working summer until well after it ended. They got paid at the end of July for working all of summer, while all our district staff had been paid twice on time. The process from beginning to end of requesting a contract takes over 2 months, about 2 months, and it goes through 3 different avenues before it comes back to accounting. I don't know how many people could go months of working without getting paid. They don't call you to check on their payments. They call us over and over, and we have to tell them the same thing. We're so sorry, your contract documents are in the works. There was a setback with board approvals. They're processing them as fast as the process allows. You'll see your payments soon. It's not fair to them that information isn't requested prior to the board meeting, because we know agendas get reviewed beforehand. There's only so much transparency that you can see on paper. You also have to be willing to do legwork and plan to walk with our admin and state teams when they come visit our schools, to attend and stay to watch our schools perform at school and community events. Our Coachella parade last week had 100 entries. 70 of those entries were expanded learning. Come out to our sports events and see the 1,000+ students, parents, and staff that are attending. Come to our office on time card day. On our extra services requests, I feel the need to bring some lack of transparency issues to light since they weren't addressed in the previous regular board meeting. Expanded learning is always attacked and bashed, claiming non-transparency and mismanagement of funds, non-compliance, or just suspicious. Or my favorite, we do whatever we want. It's dirt thrown at us so people think that we don't know what we're doing. So let's be honest, we get hot potatoed things all the time, and when it brings them to us, we handle it because we're the expanded learning department and that's what we do. Know that this is not about money. It's about principle and impartiality when it comes to transparency. Hold everyone accountable to the same rules and standards. When you see extra services come to you on the agenda, do you know which administrator submits it? Has anyone ever had to ask? Because when our department submits anything, it always gets picked apart. Yet when an extra service item came to board from a department using ELOP funds that wasn't requested by us, didn't come from our office, went all the way through school stream admin approvals. Mind you, we have 8 approvals. This one came through with 5 or less. Then it came to board, it was passed with no discussion of outside of closed session, even though it clearly said ELOP. Someone had to have known that it didn't come from our office not to pull it. No discussion. I, for one, was expecting some kind of discussion since we always have issues. The item was only pushed back by 2 weeks, and I was blown away when I heard, we'll see if ACES has anything to do with it. Really? What does that even mean? Like this is restricted grant funding that our department manages. I understand that one administrator approved the form twice, then a director, interim admin, two individuals that don't even approve on any of our budgets. Fully approved, came to board. We found out when the board agenda came out that there was something on there. Why was another department allowed to use ELOP restricted funds earmarked for expanded learning support that doesn't belong to their department, nor do they manage it? Funding was used without informing the department that oversees it. This has never been allowed before. Why was it allowed now? What would have happened if we did that? Are you kidding? How much scrutiny we would be in. We would never hear the end of it. Budget lines are 22 digits long, 7 sets of digits. It wasn't by accident that they had our exact budget string, and we don't give it out, and that's one of the reasons why. We get accused of non-transparency, mismanagement of funds, not being able to manage our budgets, but how is what they did any different? How are we supposed to be expected to manage our budgets accurately when we don't even know if other departments are using our funding? How do we know it's compliant and not supplanting? And when we have an interim admin stating, we'll see if ACES has anything to do with it, to me, that sounds like we need a review of our grant regulations and compliance. Why doesn't transparency apply to everyone? Why is it okay to unethically use another department's restricted grant funding, and it was pushed under the rug with no discussion, not pulled, hush, hush? Someone had an expiring deadline, didn't have the funding for it, said they have funding. They're not going to question it because it's under the same umbrella of departments. I'm not going to tell them. It was pushed under the rug, and I'm not staying quiet about it. Our hiring process was hammered, and I can tell you that none of the individuals that were approved have an application to work through our department using our funding. I never saw a flyer posted to the district. How were they selected? It's not about the program. It's not about the money. This is about how this happened. The last time we hired, we received over 100 applications, and we're still scheduling interviews. What do we tell the current applicants waiting for those interviews about a board item that got approved with ELOP funding? Why they're still waiting for an interview? They are district certificated, classified, and community staff. This didn't come from our department. And let's be honest, it was going to come to us anyways, and it already has. We all work for the same organization. Why sabotage your own? I was bumped into the expanded learning department in 2008, and since then, I have to audit all of our school sites' Galaxy expenses monthly to make sure that no one accidentally or accidentally on purpose used our budget for something or transferred something that hadn't been approved yet. In the past, we've had to remove expenses that weren't ours. Who else has to do that? We get audited 1 to 2 times a year. When was the last time anyone heard of our department having compliance audit findings? You haven't, because we don't. We know our compliance and grant regulations, and we don't do things in our department because they're easy and can cover it up or come back and fix it later. We do it because it's the right thing, the right way, and it's for our kids.
You have about 10 seconds left.
Summer school, we processed 880 time cards, just Jenna and I. We're used to 240. That was an additional 640 time cards. Could have been a grievance, but we sucked it up because we don't.
Your time has expired. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Veronica Dueñas, subject 7.2, I believe.
Good evening. My name is Veronica Dueñas. I am the Chief Union Steward to CSA Classified Union, one of the leadership on the E-Board. Good evening, President Joey Acuna, board members, Dr. Esparza, Superintendent, and extended cabinet. I don't know what to say anymore. I've heard everybody here. I've heard all my members throughout these days and the crisis that we are in. And all it is layoffs, layoffs, layoffs. I'm hearing the same thing over and over again. Tonight, same thing reiterated. I'm tired of the blaming, shaming, people going on media and doing the same thing over and over again. You are the board. $11.7 million layoff that's gonna hit classified. And yet, here we are. I don't understand what is the disconnect. Well, technically, I know the disconnect. 2 associations disconnected, board disconnected. What is going to happen if state was to take over? These are our people. This is our district. You are up there. Am I supposed to point and blame you guys? Everybody on that board has to know what this presentation is going to show. You have to have known. And we can blame back and forth for as long as we want because we've all been here. I have 20 years and I know every one of you. I know new board members also. And you've been there for more than a year to 2 years. So you knew something had to have happened, whether they didn't and whether your management didn't tell you or not tell you, but you're still sitting up there. How do we fix this? Because as far as I see on these numbers, 6 million certificated, 11.7 million classified, 1.4 million on department management, 5.7 million on district department reductions. So you guys and everybody else in this room can point fingers to everybody. I'm tired of that. My people, mine, because I am their leadership, are out there trying to figure out, is it gonna be me? Am I gonna lose my job? What are you guys going to do about this? Please, we need to take responsibility as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have on 7.1, Joshua Nibaglan, CVTA.
Good evening, President Acuna and Board Trustees. I've come to speak about item 7.1, the presentation on CVUSD's procurement, request for proposals, and public works building procedures. I was disappointed to see that you again failed to attach the information to the presentation on the agenda. This is beginning to be a pattern of behavior pointing towards willful noncompliance with the Brown Act.
and further demonstrates a need for transparency in district operations and board policies. Since the presentation wasn't attached, I'll just have to make a few comments about the process as it now stands. Some seem to have the impression that requests for proposals are just a hoop that you have to jump through to get things done. In fact, they are meant to be a process which ensures that public taxpayer dollars are being utilized to the greatest effect and help eliminate conflicts of interest that may exist. A mechanism which holds board members, district personnel, and vendors accountable to the public. Instead, we're finding troubling interference in this process by certain board members, job specifications that are missing key items for projects, and vendors not being held to bids that they submitted and won. I strongly urge a revamping of these policies and procedures and a greater effort to making these decisions with fidelity and transparency. Thank you.
Seeing no other comments, we're going to go ahead and move on. Board member reports. We'll go ahead and start with our, I'm sorry, move down to that. Our student trustee report, Mr. Huerta, if you would, please. Right there. Just use that microphone. Just press the button. Yeah.
From Coachella Valley High School, Lina Bautista. I am deeply troubled by the upcoming budget cuts involving layoffs and program cuts, and I fear they will negatively impact our students. Even with our current staff, we are still facing unresolved issues, and many classrooms are relying on new substitutes every day. Letting go of too many positions affects students more than anyone else, and without students, there is no school. I want to make sure these changes don't distract us from addressing the ongoing problems. Our students should not suffer the consequences of decisions they did not make, and it is crucial that we prioritize their education and well-being above all else. Although there are many victories to come, students have their own set of victories around campus. It is great to see that they take education very seriously. From La Familia High School, Roxana Medina. Counseling academic progress reports took place on December 5, and deficiency notices were sent home for students with failing grades. Our counselor is also discussing with students about filling out forms to go back to their previous school if they plan to transfer back next semester. Any questions seniors have regarding financial aid or DREAM Act, our counselor will assist them. A financial aid workshop took place to give additional information to students about applying for FAFSA and got the chance to learn how to make candles. ASB is hosting LAFA's 12 Day of Attendance, motivating students to attend school every day for 12 consecutive days. Those students will receive a special prize for their dedication on showing up to school and commitment to learning. Athletics. Basketball season has officially ended. The boys basketball team has had 2 victories, the second one being the last game, and 3 losses. The girls basketball team had 1 win, 18-9 against Manning. La Familia High School would like to thank the district for the new technology upgrades in our school. West Shores High School, Isabela Jimenez Martinez. After school tutoring and support, tutoring began this week for students below a C level, but it's open for all. 19 students attended on December 11, and positive results are already being seen. Additional resources like tutor.com are available for 24/7 homework help. College and Career Center updates. The College and Career Center now has 2 counselors collaborating with teachers to support students. Kimberly Moreno has joined as the newest counselor to focus on college prep and Puente program. Sport achievements. Boys soccer secured 9-0 victory against 29 Palms. Girls volleyball earned all academic team recognition by CIF. Jacqueline Saravia was named Scholar Athlete for achieving the highest GPA in CIF's league. Desert Mirage High School, me, Eric Huerta. I want to address the upcoming budget cuts and the potential layoffs that could impact our school. If we lose staff, it will hurt our students the most. Our students need stability and support to succeed, and the cuts to staffing will make it harder to provide that. On a brighter note, the Motor Coach Country Club is collaborating with the MHS hosting its third annual turkey giveaway on December 18th to provide turkeys to local families in need, helping ensure everyone can enjoy their holiday meal. Everyone in our community is invited. On December 10th, the migrant program held their December celebration, where each migrant student received a toy and families were given a box of food. I am proud to share that Erika Negrete, a student from Puente program, has been awarded a full-ride scholarship to the University of Notre Dame worth $80,000 per year. She's the third student from Desert Mirage to receive this honor and became a Questbridge Scholar. This is a huge achievement and a testament of the hard work of our students and staff. Lastly, I want to thank the CVUSD for their ongoing efforts to improve our schools. While we are facing challenges, I am confident that together we can overcome them and continue supporting our students. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that. We're going to start with board comments. Board Member Torres, this is where board members can ask. This is what board members can ask for anything in the future, report any visits they have, or any other questions that they may have publicly to us or to the community. So I know you have probably had a lot of stuff yet to talk about, but I would like to give you the opportunity to go ahead and make your statement for your board comments.
Thank you, President Cunha. As far as what I've heard from the public today, I think that's probably where I would start, right, is providing, documents. I'm not sure, since I'm new, that if the protocol is, what's on the agenda, approval of the agenda beforehand, and I see that some of them don't have attachments, or maybe there's a reason for that. Like I said, I'm new, but for the future, I've been talking to a couple board members in the back and stuff, but, where I work, we've gone through the same scenario as far as budget and reductions and planning and what I found, as far as the budget, once you receive funding, there always has to be, we've learned the hard way too, that there always has to be reception of the award. But not only that, when you receive an award, there has to be a spend down plan. And we learned the hard way that, we got this award, we planned, we hired, and we didn't have a spend down plan, and then we hit that fiscal cliff, if you call it the fiscal cliff. And, my board put it off, and then we had to do a drastic change, which adversely affected the integrity of the organization. So I think that's what we would look at, and just learning from that, adapting procedures to address that. But there's never a perfect world. You can always be proactive, but sometimes there's going to be things you have to be react for. But I think just better planning from this point on would help. That would be my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Garcia.
Thank you. Yes, the conversations, can you hear? Does it work? Okay, sorry. The conversations that we're having, that we've been having, are not easy, and we fully understand the gravity of that. I'm proud that we spent the amount of special sessions that we did to really hash out and understand for ourselves what it is that we were doing, because this is not easy. Of course not. It feels like with this first step, we are righting the ship. We had all these dollars, and unfortunately, because we didn't phase this in, it's going to feel like a shock for some people, but we're trying to get back to our core and become efficient again on how we're using the funding that we have and resources that we have. You are all our employees, you are all our resources, and we need to figure out how to utilize you for our students as efficiently as possible. That's not easy. I'm proud that we've taken the time for this first part, and I really hope that if we're going to need a second round, that we take that time to really understand what we're doing before we have to make any more cuts. I hope that everyone is still able to have a happy holiday, rest and recharge. I know there's a lot of uncertainty out there, and that's never easy, but we are doing this in good faith for our students, for everyone, all of you. That's my comment.
Thank you. Board Member Gonzalez.
Mr. Cunha, I'd like to take the time to congratulate Mr. Thomas Torres and welcome him to the board. I think he's going to bring a unique perspective. Even though we're a pretty homogeneous community, I think sometimes the community, the Native American community, sometimes may feel left out. I think he's going to give us a unique perspective on issues that we sometimes may overlook, and I think it's a great contribution to this board. So I look forward to working with him. We're in a tough situation, and I hate to say it, but I seen this happening 2 years ago, 18 months ago, and I pleaded with the board, the challenge that we were going to have being that we didn't have a plan. I felt that the gentleman that was here as our superintendent was overlooking those key components or key factors that we needed to manifest in order to not be in this position. It was problem after problem. It obviously has, the synergy of the perfect storm has manifested. It's here in front of us. We're going to have to make real tough decisions. It's a tragedy because I think people that work for us, they depend on a check, they build a lifestyle around it, and obviously when you don't have an income, it becomes very, very difficult. And so as hard as these decisions are, it's a reminder that when we have a superintendent, that we should have a qualified superintendent, that we should have a superintendent that is going to avoid these types of situations occurring. I know that holding information from the board, not informing the board, maybe not even understanding what needed to be done, all factored into where we're at. These decisions, again, are going to be very difficult, Mr. Cunha, and unfortunately, ultimately, I believe it's going to be the right decision for our students, which is why we're here. That's my report.
Thank you. Board Member Redondo.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. So I want to start off, too, by welcoming Torres to the dais. I look forward to working with you collaboratively and as we move forward. Really quick, I got to attend the California School Board Association where we talked a lot at length about the fiscal cliff that many districts are having, and unfortunately we are a district that is trying to write our stabilization plan and make sure that the least amount of people are affected. I think we're a community that looks to our workforce and understands and looks at the effects of what this fiscal stabilization plan means for everyone. So I know that there are a lot of questions, there are a lot of fears. I definitely understand that. And I know that as a board member, I've been here since 2020, and I take full responsibility as to what's in front of me. I'm not one to shy away from saying, this or that, but I'm here to say that, I take responsibility for what's in front of us, and the only thing that I can do now is look at this budget, work with my colleagues to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and that we make sure to move forward collectively and with a plan that's going to do the least amount of effect on our community, and especially in our classrooms, our students and our staff that work every day in our schools. We know how we value our staff and how much our staff does. Everybody from the bus driver to the maintenance to the yard supervisors, we know how much you all mean to our teachers. We know how much you all mean to our school district, and we want to do the most we can to make sure that we do the least amount of affecting. But just want to say thank you all for the work that you're doing. There is a lot of questions, but as a board member, I've always taken full responsibility as what's in front of me, and I can only assure you that I'm going to work collaboratively to make sure that we have a good plan that we can submit to the county tonight, and that moving forward, right, that we implement our plan and also look for opportunities where we can utilize our and make sure that our workforce is part of our, continues to be part of our district. So thank you to everybody that's here. A couple more comments. I just want to congratulate, there's a few schools out there that had some big gains in test scores. We know that test scores in some of our schools have risen. I want to thank the principals in those schools. I know a couple of them. I know Coachella Valley High School had some gains. I know Desert Mirage High School had some gains. I know Peter Pelleton Elementary had some gains. So thank you for the work that you're all doing to help and continuing to help our students through these tough times. I also want to thank, I know that the Coachella Parade wouldn't be the same if it wasn't for our students that are part of it through our after-school program. So thank you to our after-school program who had, all those entries into the Coachella Parade. I've got to see a couple of our field renovations, and I know that through these tough times, we'll still continue to do the best we can to make sure that our schools are being kept up. So with that, I thank you, President Cunha.
Board Member Paz.
Good evening, welcome everyone. Chairman Tortes, and I call him chairman not because he's the chair here, okay, but from the tribe. So welcome, pleasure to have you on this dais. I do want, occasionally I don't ever keep my mail open during board meetings, and then later I see that we receive an email from Mari about public comments that were submitted. I don't know when these public comments were submitted. I do recall that they used to be read at some point, and then somehow we didn't. But I happen to have my email open today. I received a public comment, so I'm going to read it out loud. And this says from Juan L., subject budget cuts. If there is one thing that our district can save money on is by cutting the programs that are useless. One of the programs that has very little use is having multiple coaches in one school site. Many of the topics covered by instructional coaches are already covered during staff professional development. In addition, many of these topics can also be covered during our 2 full days of professional development throughout the school year. Our school district has a system in place for struggling teachers called the PAR. Why not have teachers that are struggling use the program? Administrators can recommend a teacher to go into the program. Why not use it? Administrators should be the first line of help for our teachers as well. Administrators should be knowledgeable enough to provide instructional recommendations for our teachers, which sometimes is not the case. I do believe that coaching has some value in it, but having multiple coaches is not necessary. Possibly sharing coaches between school sites would be a better idea and better use of our funding. Another program that has no accountability and no credibility is the VAPA program, which was designed for college and career readiness, but there's no accountability to it. There are no assessments, and there's no way to track student growth. Our students would be better off having their extended lunch recess and having time to socialize and build positive relationships with their peers, which they so much crave, rather than focusing on something that has no accountability to it. Please take time to visit a VAPA classroom. Ask yourself, how will the content provided prepare any student for a career or college? It's time to think outside of the box and get rid of things that don't work. Many of you sitting at the board have not spent time looking at the things you've approved. There's only a handful of you that actually walk schools and walk the programs that you approve. Please take some time to learn about the critical decisions you take and how it impacts the classroom. Some of the recommendations for programs you've approved have been from people who have spent years outside the classroom. Our classroom dynamics have changed a whole lot. Take some time to visit one. So that was a comment again from Juan L. Now to my comments. I want to welcome everyone. Thank you for the comments that you provide consistently to this board. As has been stated, we are in a situation where we're making very difficult decisions, and I appreciate Veronica's words, right, that this is not about pointing fingers or blaming, that we need to move together. Because ultimately, if we cannot move together, the only ones hurting is our community. Right? It's not about any one of us here. It's not about who was here before us. It's what we have in front of us. So thank you, Veronica, for those words. And the difficult part, right, is that I think I can agree, not I think I know, I can agree with we need to be more effective with our programs, our use of resources. The question becomes, like, do we all agree on what that means, right? Like, we can say one thing works and somebody else likes something else, and that's where I think we tend to feel the most tension. So I do ask that as we are going through this, that we remind ourselves of what's uniting us, and that again, it's doing the best for our communities, for our students, for the people who make CVUSD what it is, and that we keep an open mind, because we're not all going to agree on what the best way is. There's going to be things we're not going to like. There's going to think we wish we're there and are not there. And I think right now it's just about putting everything on the table that we can so that we can make the best decision, and that, as some of my colleagues have said, right, like, how do we get to the point where this can be prevented? Like, this doesn't have to happen every time there is one-time dollars. Those are things that we all knew and we all asked, right, that needed to be planned for. And here we are. But I do think, again, the only way we get there is if we can all be with an open mind and all hands on board to turn this over. Thank you.
Vice President Vargas.
So hard to follow Trustee Paz with her eloquent words. Well, first of all, welcome, Chairman Tortes. I'm really glad to have you on the board, and I do think that it's definitely a voice and a perspective that I will. It's definitely needed in our board, and so I'm really looking forward to have the opportunity to work with you and just get to know a little bit more about, you know, your perspective and the community that you've served for a long time. With respect to the, you know, my own report, you know, I did get the opportunity to join and attend CSBA this past weekend. There are a number of things that kind of came to mind and stuck with me, and especially as we're about to have these conversations that are, you know, very difficult to have, right? It's been on my mind since we've started talking about, you know, trying to plan, right? And I think we had we known what we know today, you know, 2 years ago, I think we would have, you know, better prepared, right? I do appreciate all the public comments that were shared today. I think today's conversation, for me, definitely keep in mind, you know, like, the cuts reflect in our people, right? The people, the community. And so it is top of mind for me. And I know I'm not being very eloquent right now, but I think it's just been hard, right, to think about every decision is going to have an impact to our students, to our classrooms, to our staff. You know, I think as we're going through this first phase, having this first conversation and going through our first interim, it's not the last step, the last conversation, right? We have been discussing ensuring that we're preparing and making plans, right? And I think, unfortunately, we failed to do that, right? You know, I appreciate Veronica's comments as well. You know, we could sit here and blame everyone, point fingers, and that's not going to do us any good, right? And so I really hope that we can all, you know, collaborate and really be honest about where the inefficiencies are, how we can assess what's working, what's not, so that we can make the best decisions and try our best to, you know, that we are making the best decisions and supporting our staff and students and just looking at the big picture. I think I'll save the rest of my comments for the presentation. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I as well welcome you, Mr. Torres, to the board member Torres, to the board. We have worked together on other parts. Mostly I was on the staff side of that particular part, but it'll be nice to work with you as a colleague. I've always valued your kind of your background and where you came from and how you got to where you got. It's a very interesting story. Many people don't know it, but it also gives people perspective, as we all kind of came from our different perspectives and how we all grew up and how that affected the way we look at life. So I've always respected that and appreciated that. So welcome on board. You know, I don't need to rehash what everybody's already said. Veronica, you're absolutely right. And again, I have never been one to say otherwise. I will not speak on behalf of the board, but I'm responsible for everything that not only comes before, but went behind. And I've always said that. The reason the county is sitting here is because last year, some of the board members voted to do the right thing and make those cuts. Unfortunately, you already know, half of you know what happened, who didn't do what. Still my responsibility. My responsibility is to hold all those people accountable, starting from the superintendent all the way down. Again, my responsibility at the end of the day. That's what being a board member is about. You may like it, you may not like it. In my mind, that's our job. And again, people do things without telling us, without asking permission. We all know that. But again, it's still, at the end of the day, we sit here, it's our responsibility. So again, we are here because we did pass a budget last year that the county said, hey, looks good. You follow this plan, you're going to be okay. We didn't follow the plan, now we're here. So now it's almost doubled in size and it's going. And I don't want anyone to be under any illusion. This is part one. This isn't the be-all, end-all. This isn't just we're going to pass this and the county's like, yay, you guys are good and we're going to move forward. There's more to come. So, I mean, and again, I've always told you guys, I tell you the truth. I don't sugarcoat it. I tell you, this is coming. And we all need to prepare for this. And yes, every position, every person, they have families, they have things at the end of the day, but we need to look at everything. Everything has to be put on the table. You all know that. We were consistently getting millions and millions of dollars every year. And we were staffing and we were doing all these great things. The money ended and nobody wanted to cut anybody. Nobody wanted to go back. That is a recipe for disaster, and that's exactly what happened. So you look at everything we spent the temporary funding on, that's where you start. Those programs that we did, those people we hired, the programs we expanded, all those things have to go back to where they were, back to where we could afford it. And that's going to be happening. And again, hopefully we understand that. But I don't want you all to be here sitting thinking if they're brave and they do this today that it's all over. It is not. I'm here to tell you, and I know you guys are shaking your head like, oh my God. I'm sorry, I'm going to tell you the truth. This cannot be the only thing that we do. If we don't do things this year moving forward, next year we're going to have to cut another $18, $20 million off the budget again. The more we do this year, the less it'll hurt us in the progressing years. You have to understand that. You may not like that, and the associations, you do your jobs. You protect your members, that's your job. That's not my job. My job is to make sure that the district functions, that this student has enough teachers, that he has enough teachers, not overstaffed teachers, not overstaffed at the sites, that he has enough teachers to get to do what he needs for his education. And our programs are fully staffed in that way. And we have to stop grabbing one-time monies to solve our problems. To try to put it in temporarily to get us through another year, we got to stop that. And that's been happening for a long time. And again, Veronica, as you said, we are responsible. And again, I don't speak for the board, I speak for myself. I am responsible for what has happened while I am here, right? Now, I haven't been the only one here, but I will take my share of that blame for not holding people accountable, starting from myself down to the superintendent and everybody else who, sometimes decides that they have more authority than they do. So again, I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but if we do this right, this is not going to be the only one. So you need to prepare. Everybody's talking about, well, we're going to try not to cut. No, we have to prepare for this because it is coming. Now, if people choose not to vote for it, then they have the right to vote however they want to write. But we already know what's going to happen. If we don't do the right thing and righten our ship, that man over there is going to talk to his boss, and his boss is going to talk to the state, and they're going to come in and take over. And for those of you who have made public comments, like maybe that's the best thing for the district, I was elected once after the board had gone through this. I came in after the fact. Nah, it's not fun. You have no idea how bad it is. You have no idea what they can do and how they can do it. You do not have an idea. So we either take the pain now or take more pain later. I mean, it's going to be a choice. But again, as we vote, that's going to be the discussion of the vote. We either vote to do what's necessary and continue, try to get the district out, or people choose not to vote, and that gentleman over there is going to call his boss, and the process will get started. So again, I don't want to be the bad guy, but they're calling me that anyway, so I might as well accept the role. We're not done. If we do this right, this is just the first part of it. This isn't going to be the end of it. So again, I have always told you, I'll tell you the truth, even if you don't like it and you get mad at me, that's okay. But that's where we're at. And people need to start acknowledging that. People need to stop promising things that, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. We're not going to do any of that stuff. You know, I'm not going to pull, like I normally pull, you guys see me pull a extra services report all the time for all the extra services. I had a conversation with the staff and questioned everything. Look, extra services are great, but they are that, extra services. And if we don't have money to do extra services, we got to stop doing extra services. We got to stop. That's just the end of it. I've had a conversation with them. I'm going to question all of them. Just because I don't pull them, you know, when I pull them, you guys know they still get voted on anyway. But I'm going to keep having those conversations with them about, do we need this? Isn't there somebody else that already supposed to be doing this? We have to ask those questions. So again, not to be the bearer of bad news, but if we do this right, this is our first step, not our last step. So with that cheerful, joyous noise there, Dr. Esparza.
Well, thank you. That's a hard act to follow now, like you stated. I'd like to congratulate Ms. Parati and Mr. Budai for always getting us that golden bell. We're so proud of our students and our staff that brought us to CSBA last week, and we were able to celebrate with about 100 other schools. We won the Environmental Education Award, and so we're very, very proud of our students and KidWin, especially the KidWin program that Mr. Badai runs. I also want to congratulate Transportation Department, who won in their area at the Coachella Parade, and they're holding up the trophy back there. They won first prize in that Coachella Parade for their electric bus. I'd also like to congratulate the Students of the Month who won at RCOE Student of the Month this year. I want to thank all the students and the teachers who are putting on those awesome presentations, those holiday presentations at the schools during this holiday season. I also want to thank Supervisor Manuel Perez. Tomorrow he will be opening or having a ribbon cutting right across the street from here to open up the first park here in Thermal. And I'd also like to thank Lydia Rodriguez and Ms. Felicia for putting on an amazing migrant program and making sure that our students were celebrated this year by the Unitarian Church. They were all given gifts here. Santa Claus was here to take pictures with them, and it was a great celebration. This happened here the day before yesterday. So lots of great things happening. I'd also like to piggyback on Mr. Arredondo's congratulations to CV High School, Desert Mirage High School, Peter Pendleton, Mount Vista, and all the schools who showed some growth this year. We are very, very proud that we were able to show some growth in ELA and in math. And I want to make sure that all of our administrators in the back who support the work at the schools, that all of you are also thanked for the work that you do. I know you are working with the coaches, you're working with the leadership staff, and we're making sure that we're putting reading and math first, reading and math first, because you heard the test scores. You've seen the test scores. Reading and math first. We're an educational institution that needs to give our students the civil rights to learn how to read. Yes, we do. They need to learn how to read. And so we want to make sure that we continue to do what we're doing to ensure that our students have the opportunities to be able to, like our student that is sitting next to me here, to be a student trustee, to have that leadership skill, as well as the students that he talked about, one being the one from Desert Mirage who won the scholarship to Notre Dame. And so, again, thank you everyone who is helping us to make sure that our students continue to learn and that our students continue to thrive in CVUSD. I understand that there are lots and lots of concerns in regards to our fiscal stabilization plan. It is a plan that has been put together by the leadership team here in CVUSD, and we want to make sure that every single student has an opportunity, like I mentioned, to be able to read, to do math, science, social studies, and to be able to have that education that they deserve. And so with that, we will be presenting a fiscal stabilization plan that is going to do just that. We're going to make sure that our students continue to get the education that they deserve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Esparza. Okay, moving on to the organizational updates. Item 6.1, Superintendent Esparza, approval of the governing board meeting day, time, and location for calendar year 2025. Anybody have any questions on those?
Motion to accept staff recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions? All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Student trustee? All those opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
Mr. Cunha, maybe I should make this comment. This time last year, we decided that we weren't going to have our Thursday meeting as part of, we adopted our master calendar respecting the day of the Virgin Mary, and that's why we didn't meet yesterday. It wasn't changed last week or the week before. This was actually done a whole year ahead of time, and I heard that the meeting day was changed conveniently. No, just the way we're adopting today is what we did last year, and we found out that Thursday, yesterday, was on that day, and for a lot of families, it's an important day, and we felt respecting it, we moved it to a Friday, right? Just for the record.
Thank you, Board Member Gonzalez. Item 6.2, approval of certification of authorized signatures. Any questions there?
I motion the same.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any more questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Student trustee? All those opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Item 6.3, approval to appoint the superintendent as secretary to the governing board.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Student trustee? Any opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Item 6.4, approval to appoint the assistant superintendent of human resources or designee as the affirmative action officer.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Student trustee? All those opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Now we're going to move on to the presentations. What did I miss? Oh, okay. Just so I've been reminded, we did speak about this before, but just to, I guess, put it back on the record, the reason that we are not reorganizing the officers is because that is done usually after an election. As you all know, the County of Imperial made a mistake with the ballots. They have rescheduled that to a March 4th election. Therefore, when that election takes place and they are certified to the, from the counties, both counties actually, but Imperial County is the one that's going to be doing that later, then they will have the restructuring of officers. And trust me, anybody who wants to be president, they can take it right about now. I'm about done with it. So, but that is the reason why some people have asked why that wasn't. We discussed it before. The order was everything stays the same. Board members' terms are extended until there is a certified winner. Board member Tortas was appointed in lieu of an election, and that's why he is seated. His election had nothing to do with the mistake that Imperial County made. So,
If I could add, I think the press release from Imperial County says the certification results would be on March 18th.
yes, the election day is that. They certify on the 18th?
18th.
So after the 18th, we'll have a certification. The very next board meeting, we'll have the reorganization of the officers for the board. So I was reminded to read that. We did talk about it before, but just a reminder for those of you who did, a couple of people did inquire about that, why we weren't doing that part of the organizational meeting. Okay? All right. Presentations, sorry about that. Item 7.1, presentation on CVUSD's procurement request for proposals, RFPs, and public works bidding procedures. Not sure who's going to take it. All right.
Good song. There we go.
Student trustees and community members, my name is Leticia Torres. Thank you for being here today. As the interim director of facilities, I want to address recent concerns about our construction bidding process. Transparency and integrity are and always will be at the core of our operations. I assure you that we are committed to the highest ethical standards. Our presentation demonstrates our transparent, fair, and compliant bidding process. This presentation underscores our dedication to lawfulness and ethics, showcasing our project's adherence to a rigorous and open procedure. I express my gratitude to our team for their unyielding professionalism. As we move forward, your support and engagement are invaluable to us. Thank you for continuing this journey with us. Here's to a transparent and successful future, providing optimal school facilities for our students and all stakeholders.
Good evening, everyone. First, I'd like to begin with a high-level overview of the bidding process for those who are not familiar with it. The bidding process is a formal competition amongst qualified contractors and suppliers. Its primary goal is to ensure fairness, quality, and to award each contract to the lowest responsible bidder. This process is essential in the procurement of goods, services, as it allows transparency and fair evaluation of all proposals. Here we have a list of laws, rules, and regulations that we must adhere to in order to stay compliant here at CVUSD. First bullet is the CASBO conference. The CASBO conference is a conference that purchasing and facilities departments attend each year. This conference provides comprehensive training in purchasing, public works, bidding practices, and also provides updates or changes to the rules and regulations listed below. EDGAR, which governs the purchase of goods under federal grants, Public Contract Code, California Department of Education, Labor Code, and Environmental Compliance. Next slide. Here we have the Public Contract Code bid limits. Public Contract Code 20111 is for purchase of equipment, materials, service, and supplies that are not construction. This threshold originally was set at $50,000, but has increased to $114,500 due to inflation over the years. Next, you will see the bid threshold for public works, which is $15,000. Anything over $15,000 must go out for bid. At the very bottom here, we've listed piggybacks, joint purchase agreements, which are the only exceptions that do not require bidding. These exceptions help the district leverage existing contracts from other public agencies. Please note, these cooperatives still require board approval and do not apply to construction under public works.
Public Works bidding procedures. First step, determine project scope and cost. Identify project need and details with estimated costs. Public bidding is required for projects exceeding $15,000. Prepare bid documents. Include specifications, plans, bid forms, deadlines, and legal terms. Ensure compliance with applicable building codes and district requirements. Advertise invitation for bids, which what we call notice of inviting bids. Publish in a local newspaper for 2 consecutive weeks. Post publicly to ensure wide visibility. We post this at our CVUSD bid manager. Chris.
Conduct a mandatory pre-bid meeting. Any contractor bidding the project who fails to attend the mandatory job walk conference will be deemed a non-responsive bidder and will have its bid returned unopened. Provide clarification on project requirements. Address contractor questions to avoid misunderstandings. Those are the reasons to conduct a mandatory pre-bid meeting. Receive closed sealed bids, open publicly, read aloud at the time and place specified in the notice of inviting bids. Collect bids by the specified deadline and time. In our case, it's the superintendent's office where they're time-stamped and held until the deadline. Open bids publicly and document bid details. Evaluate bids. Review compliance with project requirements. Award the contract to the lowest responsible bidder. And it's more, acknowledge the bid.
Okay, awarding the contract. The school board approves the selection of the bid that is being recommended by the facilities department or in purchasing departments. Notify the selected bidder and issue the contract, and issue a notice to proceed contract. Post award requirements. Ensure contractor provides performance and payment bonds. Verify insurance coverage, licenses, and prevailing wage compliance. You issue the notice to proceed after it's been awarded. Grant the contractor official authorization to start the project. Chris.
Monitor construction. Oversee work progress and ensure adherence to project specifications. Manage change orders and address disputes if necessary. Close out the project. Conduct final inspections and confirm project completion. Release retention funds upon satisfactory performance. Assure that the inspector of record is inputting his information into the DSA box to close with certification.
So here I'm going to show you 3 different examples of what a bid summary looks like. When we receive the bids, we go through every single document in the bid packet and it's being checked off, as you can see. At the mega playfield, we had 5 bidders attend the mandatory pre-bid meeting, which only those who attend are able to bid the project. We received 4 bids. Those are the results. Okay, another example here. North Shore, the North Shore project. This project, we did 2 mandatory pre-bid meetings to get a wider, bidding pool. So we had 27 bidders attend both combined mandatory meetings, and only 1 bidder bid. We do not control who bids or the amounts they bid on our projects. Here's another example. Palmview. Palmview, we decided to do a multi-prime award, multi-prime bids. So we sectioned off everything by trade, by category, by trade. We received 68 bids. And out of those bids, then you see the results of the lowest responsible bidder. And then again, we don't control who bids or how many people attend our pre-bid meeting. And the board members, just for clarification, board members are not involved in any way. Everything is sealed bids. We open them up. No one has any idea of what the results will be until the end when we do the comparison. So in conclusion, the threshold for bidding, public bidding is required for projects exceeding $15,000. Prevailing wages. Contractors and subcontractors must adhere to state mandated wage rates and be registered through the Division of Industrial Relations, the DIR. Transparency. Sealed bids must be submitted to superintendent's office at date and time specified and bid openings must occur publicly to ensure fairness. Pre-qualification requirements. Districts may require pre-qualification of contracts for large-scale projects of over $1 million. In this case, we use a third-party agency. It's called PQ Bids, and they do the pre-qualification for us. Change orders. Change orders are allowed only under specific circumstances with board approval. Funding sources, developer fees, redevelopment funds, state funding, federal funding, general obligation bonds, and grants. Our projects are not based on the general fund, and we do not take away any salaries.
Thank you. Before I open it up to questions, I know who you guys are, but could you identify yourselves and your titles in your positions in the department, please?
Leticia Torres, Interim Director of Facilities.
Randy Marroquin, Director of Purchasing.
Christopher de la Rosa, my project manager.
Mario Lara, Project Manager, Facilities.
Thank you. Now, they'll know who you are, what you do. Okay, thank you. Any questions?
I have a couple questions. Yep. Thank you for your presentation. These might be very basic questions because I'm not part of facilities or, necessarily part of that process, right? But I was curious to understand when the bids are submitted, it was mentioned that they're submitted to the superintendent's office. Is there a process once you start, are those bids, when they're reviewed, is it like a blind process, or how do we ensure that it's like a fair process that you're considering each of the bids that are submitted?
So they all have to, we give them a list in the bid packets. They have a list of all the documents that are required to be submitted. So if they fail to provide one of those documents, they're considered non-responsive. So let's say all 4 bidders submitted they completed their package. We go by the lowest responsible bidder and make sure that they're in compliance with all the licenses, proper licenses, and then their bonds are being provided.
Okay. And my last question, I think it's in this slide that says bid openings must occur publicly. Does that mean that there's like a public meeting that the public, what does that mean?
No, so when you advertise the notice of invited bids, you're stating there the date, time, and location of where the bids are going to be publicly opened. So anyone is invited to attend our public bid openings.
When you say openings it's like literally you're opening the bids and reviewing them. So where do we notify the public about that?
The bids arrive to the superintendent's office, and they get date stamped. So at 2:00, we go and we pick them up from their office, and we come to either to the boardroom or to one of our conference rooms. And anyone that would like to attend is welcome, because it's an open bid, and that's where they're sealed, we open them up and start going through each packet.
But where, if I, as part of the public, so the next bid's coming up, how would I know when you're
In the
coming
newspaper.
to here?
And the notice of inviting bids, it's going to be stated there.
When you're gonna literally open up the bids?
Yes.
And that's open to the public?
It's open to the public.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Go ahead.
Just wondering, because that does sound like a lot of moving parts, literal, right? With the paper envelopes, the time stamping, them being in Dr. Esparza's office, all of that sounds tricky. Why haven't we moved to digital?
For digital bidding, you mean? Because we've always done it like this. I mean, that's something we can look into.
Because for me, that just feels like it would streamline the process for so many people involved, the contractors as well. It just seems like there are so many moving parts, and I understand that it needs to be tedious. We want the best price, of course. But it also seems like it could open up the pool of people that could fill in all of those gaps, right? The paper copy, not missing anything in particular. It not having to be in Dr. Esparza's office, it'd all be timestamped digitally. There's a digital fingerprint to all of that. So security-wise, I don't feel like there would be a reason for that to not work. I'm sure even the county does that. You know, so many have moved that way. I don't want it to be just because we've always done it. I want it to be as efficient as possible for us so that we're getting the best prices, right? So if this is a revolutionary idea we've never thought of, I'd like it to be something we look into. Why aren't we doing this digitally?
Yes, we can look into it.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. So Letty, can you explain a little bit about emergencies and how that's sort of work is done out for our district? When emergencies take place, how do we select what contractor we're bringing out?
That would be under maintenance, because I just do public works. I do not handle emergencies.
Repairs. Mr. Baker, can you please come up to the podium to answer that question? I'd also like to state that when the bids are provided to my office, they're provided to Mari Tarango, who's my executive secretary. She timestamps them, and I don't get to see them. So I'm not a part of the bidding process.
Hello, everybody. Baker Alouche, Director of Maintenance and Operation. Can you repeat the question one more time, please?
Yeah, so when we have emergencies, as sometimes we do, right? How do we select our contractors who come out?
Well, we try to do everything in-house to start with. We do not outsource anything unless it's out of our capacity to do. So we have a master contract, which went actually exactly the same steps, and that's for deferred maintenance. And just a quick comment regarding why aren't we doing the digital form of bidding? Because the DSA requires hard copies just in case they want to go back and review the whole process. And this is a common thing. I worked in 3 districts, and all 3 districts follow exactly the same bidding process. It's all paper. There has to be a paper trail.
I understand that, but we could print out whatever was submitted and have a hard copy, or have them sign a printed or a DocuSign. Like, there are ways around it.
Yeah, I think they're working on a system very similar to Galaxy, but it's not. I know that in some districts they're testing it right now, but they haven't ruled it all over. But they've been working on something to go digital to save time and paper and all that stuff. Right.
I do have a follow-up question. So I understand that we get these bids and we choose the lowest bid. Is there ever a study done where we find out the final numbers after all of the change orders that can happen and where our bids actually fall? Because people can lowball us, and then it ended up being several change orders later that we ended up paying so much more than what was said in that initial bid, right? Do we ever conduct studies that show something like that? Are we aware of looking back and seeing how that goes? Because if that keeps happening over and over again and it's the same company, I would prefer us to look at that more closely and become more efficient.
So I know in deferred maintenance, we actually, let's say we have a master contract for plumbing, for example. So in the plumbing, we know from experience what's the 100 things or items that we use for a plumbing job. whatever the pipes, how big they are and all that. So these are actually, the prices are listed in the bid. And they're also, they list how much they're gonna charge us for per square foot of work. If it's digging, how many feet, and it's different from how many feet they're digging in the ground. So when we get the invoice, most of the 99.9% of the time, we actually do go back and look at the menu, let's say, the price menu that we have in these bids. And sometimes like it happened, months ago when I was here the first time, we got a quote. We had a gas leak at CV High School. It was a big thing, and we had a vendor come in and go ahead and do the work. But when we got the number, it was too big. I really felt that the distance was too long, so we went and measured it. So in maintenance, I know it's easier for us than facilities because they work on way bigger projects, but we have actually a price menu, we know. So when we see something that looks, hey, kind of like this is too much, we actually go and look at, when we do the measurements, we look at the equipment that was used.
So Baker, I want to answer a question as well. So when we award the contract, there's an allowance built in to the contract amount for unforeseen conditions, which will cover change orders. Every change order gets approved by the board. You have the choice to accept or deny it. You can control that increase.
The allowance is disclosed to all bidders.
Yes, and that allowance is disclosed to all the bidders. So when you're awarding the contract, we already have a cushion in there for any unforeseen conditions. But we do bring it back to the board, and you have an opportunity to either accept or deny it.
Is that allowed?
Change orders.
So just to clarify, on your change orders though, sometimes when they come to the board, they're work that has already been done, or will you always bring it to the board first? Because I've seen both before, and sometimes that'll open it up us to liability, right? If we have a change order and sometimes we have to approve it, right? If the work has already been done. So how do we decide that?
It depends. It depends if it's something that it's urgent and it can't wait and it's within the budget. Sometimes we need to proceed and it comes back as clarification. But the proper way to do it is to bring it in to you before work is completed.
Thank you, Lep.
Can I ask?
Sorry? Yeah, I'll get to you. One quick clarification. It comes to the Facilities Committee first. And then the Facilities Committee, we never vote on anything. We vote on recommendations to the board. So if you hear that the Facilities Committee is doing all this, we don't. The Facilities Committee simply votes on recommendations to the full board. If we accept, we kind of do the shortcut. And we are the ones that do all the work. We see what it is, we give a recommendation to the full board, and the full board decides, not the Facilities Committee. We make recommendations, just like everybody else who makes recommendations, everything on the agenda. So it normally comes through the Facilities Committee first, not always, because sometimes there's an urgency and we don't have a meeting in between. But just for, and you should know this, you're on the Facilities Committee with myself and Board Member Gonzalez. It comes to us for recommendation to the full board. That's the process. So just doesn't go straight to I just wanted to make sure, because somebody's going to ask, well, you guys vote on it at the facilities meeting. It does go through us. Those votes are recommendations to the board, not votes to award a project or to okay change orders or anything else. So just a quick clarification on that.
Is the allowance a set amount? Like, is there a, kind of like what you said, we have a price, do you have a set amount that is allowed for a specific amount on a contract?
There isn't a set amount, but we normally use a 10%.
Okay, thank you.
Leticia, staff, thank you for taking the time to bring light on something that there's been a lot of propaganda on, right? We have a racist reporter guy on TV who has used two board members, the union president, to put a light over our bid process. And thank you for letting us know that we follow the state standard on sealed bids. It is the methodology, it is the way every public institution, we are looking at digital development. There's been some criticism on that because people are able to breach the information. So institutions have gotten away from that until they are completely comfortable that they can't breach the information. I did want to tell, I think Ms. Vargas asked a question, I believe she was describing every bid is sealed and you open them publicly. When you open publicly, normally who shows up are the competitors, right? If there's 4 guys, normally they'll send a representative at that hour, they'll watch the opening of these sealed bids, and then you go through and you procure them and you pick the lowest responsible bidder. I have a question for you, Leticia, as it relates to Palmview School. How many millions of dollars were we over budget at Palmview School?
For Palmview, it was $12,900,000.
Okay. And Leticia, do you remember, I wrote a letter to the board when staff they started with construction management subprime, then we had Larry Moen and Mr. Eric Lee as a finance director. Do you remember I wrote a letter warning the board that that project was going to be grossly over budget?
Yes.
And it was done in a very simple way. They basically took a construction management subprime contract as they bid it, and when staff ratified the contract, they turned it into a construction management contract, period, no subprime. Well, it doesn't mean much, it doesn't look like much, but when you go from construction management subprime to construction management, you basically are removing the insurance and liability responsibility from the construction manager. If they were to put a pipe in the middle of the concrete and they had to remove it, well, guess what? The construction manager isn't responsible, the school district is. Another thing that they did magically, and I included this all in the letter, but basically they took away the liquidative damages we had a 2-year, it was bidded a 2-year performance to deliver the school. They changed it to 5 years, right, in the final contract ratified, and then they did something very magically. They removed the construction, what we call the liability for delivering the project late. In the original contract, it was $2,000 liquidative damages per day delivered over 2 years, and they changed it to $100 instead of $2,000. Well, it doesn't seem like much, but what these guys did for a year plus, and that's how we got to that number, is they basically every month they were collecting $130,000 to $150,000 from this institution, and they were paying us $100 a day. They paid us $3,000 in liquidative damages. They were no longer paying the $2,000 a day, and they basically were paying us $3,000, and they were collecting $150,000. And they did that all the way to the end. So that was the reason. That's the reason our finance director is no longer here. That's the reason our construction guy is no longer here. But these are things that happen, and I think it's imperative that we're following the process as you have. I wish that and we've had 2 board members have bought into this idea that we're doing something wrong here. There's nothing being done wrong here. No one board member, Leticia, does one board member have the ability to award a contract?
No.
Does any one board member, has any one board member ever been present at a bid opening?
No.
Does the facilities committee control who gets the work?
No.
Does a facility committee, to Mr. President Acuña's point, does a facilities committee have anything to do with who gets picked and what kind of work, the final realization of what kind of work we're going to do?
No.
And so with that, Letty, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank staff. We're not the Wild Wild West. We're Coachella Valley Unified School District. We're a school district that operates in integrity. And we need to resonate that message because there is no wrongdoing here. And I want to thank you guys for the work that you're doing because it is very thorough. There is no moving parts. there's a system in place that people need to follow, right? And when bidding online, those types of systems become dependable enough for the California, for California to accept that as the norm, I think we should go that way. Until then, we should do it and protect the integrity of every bid that's submitted to this school district.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
For the bids, when a bid is put in the newspaper, is there a standard time for how long it's open?
2 weeks.
2 weeks, and that's standard? And then
Yes.
how are the bidders told that they receive it, that they don't receive it? Is that standard as well? So when they are awarded or not awarded, are they told?
Oh,
each of
yes,
them,
we
right?
issue a letter.
Okay, to
Yes.
each of them, and that's
Yes.
standard as well. Thank you all. I know this is tedious, but it's important for us all to understand what our process is, demystify it for the public. I'd still say that if the federal government is able to figure this out, that we can too. So again, just figuring out how to safely do it digitally to take away barriers and really make sure we're getting the best rates that we can. We know we need to be as efficient as possible for our students, and our community. These are jobs. These are important things for us. So thank you so much for this information.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you all very much, appreciate it. Okay, the reason you're here, I guess, 7.2, Dr. Esparza, Financial Stabilization Plan.
Yes. You're showing my notes. I don't want my notes in there. It's not that one.
Yeah.
It's not that one. It's the one I sent Israel.
Check with Danny. No, he did the right one.
This is real.
Let me check
It's Friday. I know. Okay, we're just making sure with IT that this is the most updated version. Okay. Good evening, Board President Acuna, board members, CVUSD staff, and community members. I am Dr. Esparza, the superintendent of CVUSD. I've been the superintendent for a little bit over 4 months now, officially. And although I'm the proud superintendent of CVUSD, I'm also the superintendent that has inherited an unstable budget. That is why we're here tonight. I've brought this information to the board, along with requiring support from RCOE, who have been so much help in these past few months. And they've sent support to us to ensure that we make the right decisions in regards to the lack of concern that they have with our budget here in CVUSD. Therefore, as a responsible superintendent, I've created a fiscal stabilization plan with some recommendations from RCOE along with our staff here. We have Daniela Tabares, who is our interim CBO. We have Dr. Monica Makowitz, who is our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, and we have our consultant, Ms. Debbie Deal. And I went to the next slide, but it's not taking it. There you go. Thank you. And so on this slide, I'm going to start with stating that ultimately, every superintendent has the duty to inform the board of any concerns related to district operations, to student achievement, and to the budget. And this is about the budget that runs the district, and it should run the district seamlessly. Our budget needs to be planned for. And so as it reads there, the board takes action on the recommendations brought forward by the superintendent. So unfortunately, the board was not aware of many of the concerns that I've discovered in my past few months. So I have been bringing a lot of this to the attention of the board. How did we get here? How do we have an unstable budget? These are the areas that we know that there's been question. So the lack of former leadership oversight over the budget, assumptions for cost of living, which we call our COLA, implementing overstatements. And I'm going to have slides for these throughout the presentation. The governing board approved staff reductions and it didn't materialize. Assumptions for negotiations were overstated with the claim that there was a 17% ending fund balance. And I do want to state that when I did become the lead negotiator for the district, the negotiations went well and we did settle because there was an overstatement. There was an overstatement provided to the district. We also know that it was mentioned in regards to staffing that their intervention program was going to continue. It was November, December when I became the lead negotiator. Of course, it was going to continue into January all the way till the end of the year with the conversations of creating the positions of literacy coaches and math coaches and MTSS coaches in our district. Understand that there was an intervention program that had close to 60 teachers in it that were paid out of one-time monies. And so as the assistant superintendent of ed services, I needed to make sure that we lessened that amount, that we made sure that we were not going to run on one-time monies. So what did I do? I made sure that we had some of our teachers in a literacy grant that would serve as coaches, and we had some of our teachers in a block grant, which was also a part of a literacy grant, that were going to be coaches. And we lessened the amount from 60 to 35, making sure that they were not going to be a part of ESSER anymore because I did know it was ending and I brought this recommendation to the superintendent. So we did have a peaceful negotiation based on the 17% reserves that we had been told we had, and we made sure that we followed through with the rifting of our teachers. However, many of them were, number 6, placed one-time monies used to fund ongoing positions. And so some of those teachers were made whole. They were made permanent positions on one-time monies, which is not something that districts are supposed to do. Go to the next. I want to share with everyone that today, this is our year's deficit. That's today, that's 24-25. We're in this year already deficit spending. Our COE's concern is about our deficit spending, but it's also about our reserves, because when we deficit spend, we put our reserves in jeopardy. And so they have advised us to ensure that we have a fiscal plan that is going to allow us to have at least a 3% reserve, and that's the minimum, a 3% reserve. So the impact of overestimating the cost of living put us in this situation. Many things, as I mentioned, a lack of concern, put us in this situation. Ms. Debbie Deal did inform the district in December that we should not move forward with our first interim at a 3.94% COLA. So went ahead and did that and presented first interim with an inflated COLA. The business department used those COLA numbers, causing an estimated $16 million local control formula funding combined. This is what happened. In May, we have the May revise. It was said, and this is in 2023, it said we have a 3.94. So of course, our fiscal staff goes with the 3.94. But in early December, it's recommended that we move quickly, because there are several things happening with the state's budget. We move quickly to accept less than 1% or at least 1% for 24-25 and then 25-26. The final estimate came on May 2024 of 1.07. By that time, we had already inflated our budget at a 3.94, causing for close to $16 million overstated budget. We got into RIFs. We wanted to make sure that we were going to RIF our teachers to make sure that we were going to stabilize. And these were our teachers that were in the ESSER. So the former human resource leadership made several one-time funded positions into permanent positions without explaining that to the board. That was given to us in an executive cabinet meeting, that it had already been done and the board did not know. And so they made decisions on a budget that they were not aware of, had underlying ramifications that got us here. Our former human resource leadership failed to fully follow through with the board directive. The board authorized reductions in force. They missed deadlines. They didn't get it correct. The former business department leadership approved human resource to move some staffing into grants instead of releasing them as approved by the board. And here we are. This information that was provided to me to go into negotiations was incorrect. And so we went into a loyal negotiations. We made sure that we were on the same page with our bargaining members, and we agreed on a percentage. We also went into impasse because we were at a point where we didn't agree. And to come out of impasse, we had to move up another percentage and then accept a 0.44 for the stipends that we give to our staff. Our COE's concern, position control. That's another concern that they have here. So it's our reserves with our budget, but ultimately it comes down to position control with human resources. And so we need to have internal controls. As a superintendent now, I've noticed that there have not been internal controls. I sat down with Dr. Price, I sat down with the executive cabinet to get an understanding of where we were with internal controls. Our business office ran internal controls when it came down to positions. They are not human resources. They do not hire. They do not give contracts. They manage the money. But for several years, position control has been taken place in the business office and not in human resources. Ultimately, we received lots of one-time money, as you can see here. 199 million. 199 million, all the way back from 2020. And what was this all for? It was for learning loss. This was for our students. This money is for our students. Our students deserve more. 199 million for our students, and we're still at 80% deficiency in math and more than 70% deficiency in reading.
Unbelievable.
This is not right. We need to right-size the district and do the right thing. We don't have this money anymore, and we can't jeopardize that our students leave our district without learning how to read and do math. They deserve more. They had $199 million for learning loss. And we're in the same situation that we were 10 years ago because our data looks the same even before COVID. So RCOE's recommendation for staffing. These are some of the things that they've asked us to do to ensure that we right-size the district, that we make sure that we have position reductions, that we have rifts and layoffs of those folks who were hired with one-time monies and beyond. And that we make sure that we right-size the district by putting a freeze and stop hiring and hiring and hiring in positions that we don't need. They want us to implement the freeze immediately. So we will be bringing something back next semester to ensure that we can do this. But one thing I do know, every student will have a teacher in their classroom. We want to make sure that we reconcile position control for the current year's budget as well. And then we analyze the impact of any positions currently being funded out of one-time monies. The option for the governing board to address the district's structural deficit. This is a recommendation. We looked really hard to find monies in the budget to make sure we didn't have to cut 500 or 600 positions. All of us looked really, really hard. And what we found is that we can do an interfund transfer, and that's what I brought to the board at the last board meeting, that we would be able to use some of the redevelopment money to save jobs, that we would make sure that we have departmental expenditure reductions, and that's also reductions in staffing. A few months ago, when I spoke to Dr. Price, I immediately brought the extended cabinet together, and those are all the directors sitting on the outside of the room right now. I made sure that they brought me their organizational charts and that they provided at least a 25 to 30% cut in their district, in their staffing or in their materials that they receive. Something that they would not need, that they can do away with, that they could help us to make sure that we are making the cuts needed in order to stabilize the district. Every director brought me their plan. Their plan of their cuts is a part of this stabilization plan. Our options to decrease expenditures. We have the 6 different options. The ones that we have looked at are all here. The redevelopment agency funds to our general fund so that we could use for our deferred maintenance, so that it's actually going to maintenance, what it was intended to do It was intended to be able to help us develop our schools. So we are using that wisely. Shifts of expenditures for unrestricted to restricted sources, utilizing our one-time restricted funds according to allowable uses. And when I say that, it is because we will be using the ELOP money as well. We want to make sure that our auditors look at every single thing so that they know that we are allowed to use that money for those items or things or people. We want to utilize available prior year restricted balances for current year, and we need to reduce vendor costs. But this is the one that hits home. It's the one that hits hard, the reduction in force, because it's hitting our classified staff, our confidential staff, our certificated staff, and our management staff. So as your superintendent, this is not easy. I need to put students first. I need to make sure that the students, again, have a teacher in the classroom and have the necessary materials to be able to thrive. So our summarized reductions are here. And they're 46 million, almost $47 million. Although the county has asked us to cut 44 million this year, we added a little bit more where we saw we could make reductions. Know that what President Acuna stated is that this is not the first piece. We will come back in January. We still have to look at several different things throughout the district to see how we can continue to right size. So this is what is required. This fiscal stabilization plan is required to be a part of our first interim. But what we are bringing you in January is what we feel the district needs in order to right size and make sure the out years are not a catastrophe. And I'll be showing you the next slide. And the next slide is going to be mouth-dropping because you are going to see positions on there and you're going to know whose positions they are. But this is what we need to do to ensure that our students receive the education that they deserve by right-sizing the district. We have shifted from Fund 40, which is our redevelopment money, to our general fund. We're aligning unrestricted expenses. We're reducing our contracts. We're cutting our departments by 25%. We are cutting several staff at both certificated and classified levels and management. As you can see, we also have on the side of the FTEs, we have vacancies. There are vacancies. Some departments are still wanting to hire. Those vacancies are going to be closed. We have a total of 197 staff members on this list. Per our COE's recommendation, the fiscal stabilization plan is step one. It's a requirement. We had to make sure that we right-size the district to ensure that we give our students what they need. The second step is stabilizing CVUSD. Even after our COE isn't here, even after auditors aren't here, we have to make sure that we are spending our money correctly to ensure, again, who's first here? Our students. Our students. At this point, as your superintendent, I am presenting this presentation and the fiscal stabilization plan to the board for approval, so we can continue to put students first. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Esparza. Might as well do the questions now, then later when we vote on this thing, so we can kind of get it out of the way. Who wants to go first? You want to go first?
So I noticed that there are a couple of discrepancies between what was uploaded and then what you presented right now. A couple of the tabs are a little different, and then definitely slide 18 wasn't on the agenda.
And we don't put that on the agenda when the agenda is published, and that's why we put an asterisk to make sure that we are going to provide this. So as soon as the board meeting is over, this presentation will be uploaded.
Okay, excellent. I did notice that some of the figures, it was on there quickly, was it looked a little different than what I remember, so I want to, the number of FTEs.
Here you go.
Feel different than what we talked about the last 3 times. I know that there were mistakes two of the times that we saw this, but I still think that that's a higher number than.
It is because of the vacancies. We didn't have the slot for the vacancies, so they were already included in there. And what you asked at one point was for us to outline the vacancies. So that's how it gets to a little over 200.
Yeah, I'm still, that number is different than I remember before.
So the initial presentation that was taken to the board didn't have the FTEs added correctly, if you recall.
Right.
And I think it was like 230 something, the initial one. After we went back to the table and we started, updating it and having further conversations, this is the plan that cabinet decided to move forward with.
I mean, it still looks different than what I remember, but.
I can, okay. Yeah, so what I remember was the FTEs being less, but, so what were the changes that you just stated that cabinet came for, that changed on this?
So if you recall, when we presented to the board during closed session, the numbers weren't adding correctly. Nothing was added. Additionally, I think the first slide that came forward to the board had a number of 231 or 237. Here we separated the actual FTEs against the vacancies. So it's the 197 plus the 8, which is close to what was taken to the board in closed session.
So 205 FTE? Yes. Correct? But none of everything else remains the same?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. In terms of looking at the positions, I know we've been discussing our enrollments. I don't know if you could speak a little bit to, how do we consider our district enrollment numbers, our projected decreases, to ensure that, the comment was made earlier that we want to make sure that every student has a teacher, right? I don't know if you could maybe speak to that so that it's clear and we understand.
So our enrollment is, close to 16,000, and we need to make sure, aside from making cuts, and I brought this to the board, that we have an attendance campaign being put on, because what is happening is that we are losing ADA, we are losing millions of dollars in attendance. And so we can't have 14,500 students showing up every day when we need to have 15,900. And so it's about pushing at the schools, it's about making our leadership at the schools and our parents responsible for bringing the students to school. We need to make sure that we do a better job of tracking attendance, and if we have chronic absenteeism, that we take care of that immediately.
I think a couple comments. it's hard, right? We went to CSB, well, I went to CSBA. I think we're not the only district kind of going through this, right? Unfortunately, I wish we weren't one of those districts, right? But we are, nonetheless. I think in looking at district budgets, right, I think it's not uncommon to see budgets that are 70 to 80% staffing, right? Typically, we see a lot of budgets that it's 10%, 15%, it's just like programmatic expenses, right? I do see that there's a number of vacant positions. I think it kind of speaks to me, our planning, right? Like, we knew that these funds were gonna go away, and unfortunately, we failed to plan, right? And I think by the time we got around to the planning, right, this is what it resulted in. So I appreciate staff trying to be as creative. Last week, 2 weeks ago, last week, we saw the resolution, right? And I'm glad to see that, with the support of the county and staff, to look at that. One of the things that I think comes to mind, efficiencies, right? We talked about, again, the planning, right? But I think in our mechanisms, our protocols, ensuring that if we identify these positions, right, that it's for the best of the district, right? And that's hard to say, right? But I think, last year, what comes to mind, we try to plan, right? We offer incentives, for individuals who maybe wanted to retire early. We voted on making reductions, and I think the hope was that we would avoid this, right? But unfortunately, because of the lack of mechanisms that we have in place, it's hard to hold us accountable, right, as a district. And unfortunately, we'll have to, get familiar with Mr. Ashe in the back, right, for the next couple of weeks, because he's going to hold us accountable, right? And so I hope that as a district, and I know, I'm not going to say I hope, I know that we've been working with Debbie Deal, the staff in the back, to develop the mechanisms to do that, right, in the last week or so. I know Galaxy has been, I guess for lack of a better word, scrubbed down. Cleaned up, and so I don't know if you can maybe speak a little bit to kind of those mechanisms that in the coming weeks we'll be utilizing to ensure that this isn't just a recommendation, right? We still have a vote, but it's really a directive, right? And that's, you all are asking us to be accountable to the decisions that are being made. So I think I'd like to hear a little bit about how we're going to hold ourselves accountable to the decisions, and with the hopes of ensuring our stability fiscally.
That is a great question. First of all, on that question, we'll go back a couple of years. We'll even go back a year. And it's one thing to make a plan and start going forward. It's another thing to monitor that plan, and those are called the internal controls. And we need to look deeply at those internal controls that are in place to make sure that what the board has approved happens in the budget. And we also need to make sure that the internal controls that are between departments, such as human resources and business, are adhered to, that positions are closed when they're supposed to be closed, and that people have no authorization to open those positions. So that's part of the work that we still need to do. The other part of the work that we still need to do is looking at the revenue side of the books, the revenue enhancement opportunities. This district is hovering somewhere around 90% average daily attendance. That's how we're paid. That's where the money comes from. More than 70, 75% of your money comes from there. A district of your nature, which is in the unified districts, they're normally around 95%. Now, we do realize that over the course of the last few years, with COVID, that those numbers went down. But most districts are back to normal again. Yours is not. Just to put it in context, that's somewhere around $4 million a year that we're losing ongoing. And we need to do a better job with attendance. So we not only look at budget reductions and what we can do with restricted dollars legally, but we also need to look at those revenue enhancement opportunities and do a better job with that. At the same time, we need to ensure the board that we're working on the internal control structure that's going to get this district going in the right direction and stay in the right direction. So I hope that answered your question. Thank you.
Could I just say the last thing? I think, it was mentioned that this is kind of the first step, right? I think we've spoken, or even public comment, right? We've known there are inefficiencies within our district, right? So I think that the next step is really, unfortunately also looking at our programs, right? How are they working? What's effective? I think in a conversation with the teacher, it was mentioned, we do a lot. And so I think it is going to be a time we're going to be assessing, and we've talked about cutting programs that are not working, like the comment that was submitted online. So, I guess, let's make sure we're all part of those conversations and be honest about what's working and what's not.
I want to clarify two items. The first one is on the total number of reductions. It seems to me that I think my colleagues were adding the 197 plus the 8, but no, you were reducing nothing, you were not, okay, because I just wanted to make sure that it's 197, what you're proposing, it's not 197 plus 8. Okay, just wanted to clarify that. So it's what they're proposing is 197. Out of those 197, 8 are vacant. And we're not going to fill them. Okay. And then with regards to the shift from Fund 40 to the general fund, I know that the 13 million was announced at the last board meeting, but there was also a comment after by Dr. Esparza that it may be more. So we are saying that it's not a maybe more, it's 13 million?
By the resolution, it is 13 million. We still would be able, because we got authorization from La Quinta, Coachella, and Riverside, we would be able to use more, but we want to be conservative with 13 million right now.
Okay, thank you.
I know there are already issues with our buses, such as the overcrowding and the late arrivals to school. I am concerned that these cuts might worsen the situation, and I wanted to ask if you could please clarify how this is going to be addressed.
So we'll be working on making sure that we're also right-sizing transportation. So routing methodology is going to be implemented. We will have, and I know we mentioned this a few meetings ago, busology to be able to help us with that. That's where you're going to be able to see on your app. But making sure that we are bringing our students to school on time, and that is all going to be electronic. We're going to be able to see all of that. There's going to be tracking of the buses and making sure that we're working with our staff to promote the all-in attendance. And so at this point, we do foresee that all students will be able to get to school on time, and this is not going to hinder that.
Thank you.
President Cunha, I want to thank you for the work. It obviously isn't easy. We all talked about it. Dr. Esparza, I got to especially thank you. When I met you, it took me a while to actually have a conversation with you. We kind of said hi, and I started asking you questions, and I was concerned about one-time funding going away. I was concerned about test scores and performance and the holding of the results. I was concerned about a lot of the practices that our former superintendent had. And we started having a candid conversation about this, that this could turn out this way. And it's been some time. Debbie, thank you for the work that you've done. I think you were God sent. Had you not been here, I honestly believe that the state would have taken over by now. I want to thank you for, we had Sunday, when I met you first, it was a Sunday, I believe Jocelyn was on the phone call, Adonis was on the phone call, and we were talking about some of the challenges that we had, and obviously it was hard to hear, and we don't know, it never, for me personally, one day we had a lot of money, the next day we didn't have any, and we could never get a straight answer out of finance. And it was especially difficult when we negotiated because, in fairness to the unions, they would say, hey, well, you have money over here, and yet our department couldn't find for whatever reason, couldn't add the nickels together to say no or yes. And so the fact that you ladies have been able to really tighten up the numbers, again, it's a tough situation we're in. Unfortunately, if we don't do something about it now and continue to do something in January, it's going to get even worse. So with that, I'd like to recommend staff's recommendation. Mr. Cunha, I know that somebody else might have.
This is just a presentation.
I'm sorry, that's going to happen. Yeah, I'm going to be glad to recommend staff's recommendation on this item as it comes up later in the agenda.
Huh?
Mr. O'Shea in the back want to comment
Oh,
on anything?
well, I'll ask him in a minute. Board Member Torres, I know this is your first one and you're seeing this all for the first time. If you have any questions or comments, or wait till later and say, what the hell did I get myself into? But I just want to make sure.
Well, like I said, our organization faced the same thing because of the one-time funding, and the positions didn't state on the job description that, it's only due, the position's only due to funding availability, right? And that's one of the major things that should have been done that we've learned, from that mistake. But we also looked at, like you said earlier, Mr. President, that, 5 years, 6 years ago, that's the ground zero that we had to get back to, because when we looked at, the graphs and how we are spending, and then we had to get back to net zero again, the net zero budget, and that kind of helped us. And I think that's what we need to look at as a guide here to what we were spending, a few years ago, and then what we added, but then blending that together, like we're all talking about what's going to be best for the students, what's best to keep. But we had the advantage of working with the government and our legislators to say that it's going to be a tiered, staged spending budget. So we had bought a little time, and I don't know if you have that opportunity to do here. If not, then what's presented is what's presented, and if the board prior has had time to look at the repercussions and make sure, like you said earlier, Mr. President, that every student has the teacher, has the education opportunities that we had 60 years ago before we were afforded, all of these extra funding ability. But I think that's what we're looking at. My other question, is this a task item on the agenda today?
Yes, it is.
Or just, okay.
Yep, it is.
So that's how I'm seeing it then, is that, I would go rely and defer to the board. If you have reviewed this before, and I know I've seen on Zoom that some of it was on closed session, and so I defer to the board. And you guys have been seeing this, you guys have been reviewing this and looking at all of this. I just want to make sure, what I've heard from the public today and from the students, that the students, my kids go to the school too, and that they're not going to be affected in an adverse way, especially with this bus and the transportation. Because I drive, to school every day, and I see the kids out there. It's 30 degrees and 120 degrees, and I just want to make sure that that's not affecting. All of that domino affects their learning ability. Everything that we see here that we're looking at is going to affect them, through the domino effect. So if it's the best decision of the board, then I would defer to your decisions.
All right. Anybody else have anything?
President?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say also that, as was said by the staff here, that if you look online, that we, like we said, we are not the only district. Pasadena laid off 200 staff. Paris laid off staff. Santa Barbara Unified, there's 3 schools there that laid off staff. So, and if you look, there's more schools that have done the same thing and had to lay off staff. We just have to make the best decision that we can for the students. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I'll simply close with a couple of things, and since I'm already the bearer of bad news, I'll just continue along. I want everybody to understand Just because we enhance our revenue does not mean that we need to start spending it again. That doesn't mean, oh, we can stop looking through and making sure we're right-sizing and prioritizing everything. We cannot, oh, we got money, let's just go back to our normal ways. We have to stop doing that. That's how we get into these messes. So if we're able to boost our attendance, that doesn't mean that we're going to bring everybody back or start hiring more. We need to be very deliberate in how we do this. We need to right-size, make sure our staffing is where it's supposed to be for not only our contracts, but for our needs of our students. So just because we start figuring out ways to enhance our revenue does not mean that we get to start spending again. All right, and just understand that. And I'll say the dirty word that nobody wants to say, and that in my mind anyway, that it goes along with salary increases and benefit increases. At best, we need to hold on to what we have. With benefits, I think the board is pretty solid in making sure that we maintain that level, because I think that's important to everyone. But for myself, I'm not speaking for anybody else. You need to understand that means all that as well. Just because we enhance our revenues doesn't mean, oh, hey, we can go spend a lot of money. No, we can't. That's how we got in trouble in the first time. Okay. And then the other thing I want to reiterate, because I said this before and people thought I was joking, people thought I was being funny. I'm not. This has to be a unanimous decision from the board. If it is not, I will not vote for it. We are not going through that thing that people decide, well, you guys vote for it because I don't want to be called out later politically that I cut people. No, it's a unanimous decision or I don't vote for this thing. And we all know where that heads us. With all due respect, and I'm not speaking for the board members, Board Member Torres, if you want to abstain from this, I would understand, only because you haven't seen all the numbers. If we approve it unanimously, then I guess you understand that all of us agree. But I'll just put that out there only because it's a tough first meeting. It's a tough first meeting. So now you haven't been into the meetings where we've seen all this, we've asked all our questions, and we've done all this. So I would offer that to you. When Mike said unanimous, I will give you that out, so to speak, only because you haven't been in all these meetings, but I'll leave that decision up to you. Okay? All right. Anything else? Okay, moving on. The next item is the Mrs. Tavares' presentation of the 2024-25 first interim financial report, which is what he's looking for.
Good evening, my name is Daniela Tavares and I'm the interim CBO for CVUSD. And this evening I'm going to be summarizing some of the points of our first interim budget. The governing board goal is to maintain a fiscal responsibility, and it is done by maintaining a responsible fiscal budget that involves and seeks business and community support. The superintendent is recommending the approval of the first interim report, which includes reductions identified in the district's fiscal stabilization plan that was just presented previously. The district has been working closely with RCOE to ensure the necessary reductions needed for the district to remain solvent are followed through. Prior to finalizing our first interim report, the district provided RCOE with the specific actions that the district was working on to address our financial challenges. The following slide is the budget assumptions that were used to prepare our first interim. It covers ADA. The district is funded on a 3 prior year average ADA, so even though our current actual ADA is lower, we get the benefit of being funded on a 3 prior year average. So it averages out our ADA for the 3 previous years. These assumptions are as of the May revision. In January, the governor will be releasing his estimates for the new fiscal year, and when we bring forward our second interim, those estimates will be included in the budget. The assumptions used are also a step-in column for our staff, 2% for certificated and 1% for classified. Our annual CPI, the health and welfare, statutory benefits, and the COLA for the current year and the 2 subsequent fiscal years. The next slide is a capture of our enrollment in ADA in the last 4 years. As you can see, the district has been experiencing a declining enrollment. As mentioned before, we are funded on a 3 prior year average, which gives the district a little kick in the funding. But as Ms. Debbie mentioned earlier, our current attendance percentage is about 90%. The district needs to work in trying to increase that percentage to a 95%, which is the average for a unified school district. And that would generate us about $400 million year over year on an ongoing basis.
4 million.
4 million.
4 million, I'm sorry.
Yeah, when I said zero, I said, man, I'm gonna go pick up kids.
This is a snapshot of our combined general fund and unrestricted and restricted budget. In preparation for first interim, the fiscal department, in collaboration with our COE and their support, worked very diligently, as previously mentioned, and reviewing and reconciling our position control and aligning our budget. For fiscal year 24-25, it's projected to end with an unrestricted ending balance of 59.2, which of that 46.7 will be committed as part of our district stabilization plan, and 12.4 million is our 3% required reserve. For our multi-year projection, the district stabilization plan reductions were included in fiscal year 25-26 and 26-27. Additionally, in fiscal year 25-26, the fund transfer from Fund 40 for our RMA was included in the budget. Unrestricted ending balance is projected at 40.3 million, with 29.4 million being committed for the district stabilization plan in fiscal year 25-26, and 10.5 million is a required 3% reserves. In fiscal year 26-27, a 3% salary cut across the board is included and required in order to be able to meet the 3% requirement of reserves. Annual staff step and column increases were included in the current and subsequent years. Negotiations for fiscal year 24-25 have not been settled, and they were not included in the budget. And in summary, previous recommendations that would have helped improve the district's financial health were not implemented, including staff reductions. While the specifics of these past recommendations have unfortunately evolved, the underlying necessity for responsible financial management remains constant. Our actions today, built on these initial steps, are aimed at rectifying our fiscal challenges while maintaining our commitment to our students and education. The decisions regarding budget adjustments, particularly those that involved staffing changes, have been some of the most difficult ones that have to be made. These decisions were made with a clear understanding of our shared responsibility to ensure the long-term fiscal stability of our district. Our focus must remain on moving forward, learning from our past experiences, and building a stronger district together. It is with this perspective that we now approach the necessary budget adjustments, ensuring that our fiscal resources continue to support the high-quality education of our students. The stabilization plan will ensure that the Coachella Valley Unified School District remains fiscally solvent. So at this time, it is recommended that based upon the first interim report, the governing board approve a positive certification.
All right, open it up for any questions. This one's a little different, but go ahead.
So on your budget assumption plan, that slide, there we go, that one. I noticed that in the actual ADA, there is a projected decline, like a continued decline. How did you come up with those figures?
So that's just, ADA is projected based on trends, kind of the trend that we see annually. We have a spreadsheet where we track every year what our enrollment is, what our ADA, what percentage it is. The district has consistently been averaging like about an 89-90% attendance. So when we're estimating ADA in the future years, it's kind of like those same formulas based on enrollment and ADA, what puts us at a 90%, because that's typically what the district has been
So 90% of the last figure, so it's always going to be lower. That's what you're telling me?
Correct.
Because the district is working on a 3-year rolling average, and because the district is declining. So as the district declines, the ADA factor is also declining, still maintaining at 90% of that level, and taking into account the funded ADA model. And so you will see that until the district stabilizes enrollment, you will see the ADA factor go down as well as the enrollment factor.
And that definitely makes a difference on the projected figures. I mean, because for our students in this district, because our UP count is so high, we get a base for each student, and then we get those concentrated funds, but even just a couple students makes a difference. So this formula, I mean, we're hoping to improve it. It could mean a little better even than what this is. I understand you have to project something, and our trend has been such, but that's a big figure.
So essentially, what's happening here is that while we look at revenue enhancements, it doesn't solve your problem, but you are leaving money on the table. So it's about getting all of the money that the district deserves to service the students, right? And so, yes, it's a complex formula, the local control funding formula. You get base grant. In some grades, you get a little bit of an add-on called grade span. And then for kids that qualify as unduplicated pupils for, foster youth, homeless children, also the free and reduced kids and English learners, you get a 20% bump. And then if your certain population is up over 55% of those qualifying students, then from that point up, you get another 65% of the base. And so it really is a huge amount of money. It's almost double the money when you look at the 20% and the 65%. So every time that you enhance that formula by making sure that, you increase enrollments and that you are really working on your average daily attendance, then it means that you're going to get more money from the state that you deserve. Because you still have to hire the teachers in the classroom, whether the kids show up or not.
Right, absolutely.
So making sure that we get everything from the state that we deserve is really important.
And making sure that we're conservative, but also working on it so that, again, the students this year still get funded for this year's funds, because 93% of our students fall under that extra category, right? That's why our UP count is one of the highest in the state. So making sure that we're doing right by our students, there's a reason why they get that extra funding. There is that compounded learning loss. We're still combating it. I'm so glad we're making strides, but doing right by our students means that this year's money goes to this year's students. But thank you.
Yes,
This information is
that is
excellent.
Anybody else?
I have a question on the same slide regarding the assumptions. I see that we have a statutory COLA for 25-26 as 2.93, and I know that, January is really when we're gonna get so is this 2.93 based on some projections at the state? I feel like we got in trouble the last time because we weren't as conservative as maybe we should have been, and so I'm a little worried about 2.93. Are we being as conservative as we can be?
So let me walk you back to about a year ago, about this very same time, where the next fiscal year was projecting at 3.94. We were getting a lot of messages from the state. We were getting messages from the county office, from FICMAT, from school services saying, hey, it's coming down, it's not happening. We're not getting those same kind of messages right now. The next time that we will see a first peek of what the governor thinks next year's budget is going to be for COLA will be mid-January. Right now, we're not hearing anything different, so those are the factors we're using. And when COLA is set, that's May revise, and then it is set for good, and we go forward. So we anticipate looking at the governor's budget about mid-January for any any COLA changes up or down. But right now, we're not hearing anything different than the projections that we have from the state.
Anybody else? Nothing? All right, thank you very much, appreciate it. Okay, let's start voting. Item 9, action, educational services. 9.1, Ms. Rodriguez requesting approval of memorandum of understanding with Butte County Office of Education, California Mini-Corps.
I motion to approve
second.
staff's recommendation, Mr.
I
Cunha.
have a motion and a second.
A comment.
Yes, go ahead.
My only comment, I want to make sure that staff is monitoring I think it said in the agreement that if we exceed the number of hours, that we will be responsible for paying for that cost. So we just want to make sure that we're monitoring the number of hours.
Good point.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Student trustee? All those opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Item 9.2, Ms. Sanchez requesting approval of A through G initiative to complete, data dive with Coachella Valley High School leadership team.
I motion the same.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions on that? Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Student trustee? All those opposed? Motion carries 8-0. There we go now. Item 10.1, Ms. Maldonado, approval of resolution 2025-20 to open a purchase order with Daniels Tires.
So move.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second. I just have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
How did we end up with Daniels Tires? I mean, they might be the best thing in town. I'm just wondering if there was a
Piggyback?
bid process on this, or?
Mr. Osuna?
Wait a minute. Daniels Tire is a service, right? They're a service provider for flat tires?
Yes.
It's a piggyback.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm
It's the
good.
piggyback, it's a piggyback
Yeah, I
project.
got it.
It's not a bid.
I have no question. Thank you.
Sorry. Forgot to mention that. I mean, it's not in the thing, but it's a piggyback on the contract.
It says on there.
Anybody have any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Student trustee? All those opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Okay, and item 10.2, Ms. Alares, adoption of resolution 2025-24, identify the amount of budget reductions needed in 25-26, and to require that a list of budget reductions for 25-26 included in the 2024-25 first interim report.
I motion.
I have a motion. Can I hear a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Student trustee? All those all those opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Sorry, I kept you last only because this is one of the ones we need to vote on first. No worries. Item 10.3, Ms. Tavares again, approval of the fiscal year 2024-2025 first interim report and multi-year projection.
Motion.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Student trustee? Any opposition? Motion carries 8-0. Okay, item 11.1. Assistant Superintendent Magowitz, approval of second reading for Board Policy 4119.24 and 4219.24 and 4319.24 regarding maintaining appropriate adult-student interactions. Do I hear a motion?
Motion.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Anybody have any questions? Any comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Student trustee? Motion carries 7-0. Mr. Arredondo stepped out of the room for a moment.
Is Jesus?
Oh, and this one.
Oh, Jesus left too?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The motion carries 5-0-6 with the student trustee. Sorry, I didn't notice that I saw him leave. Item 11.2, Dr. Monica, Assistant Superintendent Immaculate, sorry, approval of State of California minimum wage increase 2025.
Motion.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions? This is just what it is. This is our minimum wage. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Student trustee? Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0 with both board member, I believe board member Gonzalez had to leave, and I'm not sure. Oh, okay. I forgot he mentioned he was going to leave after we voted on the other stuff. Good. Item 12, consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered by the board to be routine and will be acted upon in one motion. There will be no discussion of these items prior to the time the board considers the motion unless members of the board or staff request specific items to be discussed and/or removed from the consent calendar, in which event the items will be considered separately. Superintendent, Assistant Superintendent of Ed Services, Business and Finance, and Human Resources recommend the approval of all consent calendar items. Do I have a motion? I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second with respect to anybody that wants to pull anything.
Okay. So, anybody want to pull something? I already said my piece, so I'm not pulling anything. Okay. They're over there going, phew, thank you. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Student trustee? All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Where am I? One more. You don't want to pull in? No, we're good.
No.
We don't have anything more for closed session, correct? Item 17.2, motion to adjourn.
Motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 10:47. Press release based on what was voted today in the stabilization plan. Board members, don't leave.